All right, today is Vayishlach. Vayishlach or Vayilach, it's more or less close neighbors, but this is a portion from Genesis 32 to 36, and this is the story of Yaakov, of Jacob, living in exile and on his way back, meeting his brother that turned into his adversary. And I think there are many lessons that we can learn for our day from this message, and I think it is important for us to look at what it means for us in our lives and think about where we are in this day in our lives, in the area that we live, and speaking of us, our experience as humanity. And the Haftarah portion of the prophetic books is Obadiah verse 1 to 21, and that is really what we are going to look at, because as you know, I'm trying to have a focus on the Haftarah portions, because I think we've been through the Torah once or twice, a couple of times maybe, and yeah, and so it's maybe good to just look at the principles found in the Torah from the prophetic book side. So firstly, let's just speak about Jacob for 5 minutes. I think when Rivka was pregnant with Yaakov and Esau, his brother, the prophetic word from our father came on a requirement is that the older will serve the younger. Remember, and that thing that she carried within her life, and we are not sure if she shared this with Isaac. It's never mentioned that they spoke about it. We can only think that they spoke about it, but. The older will serve the younger. Esau will serve Yaakov. And the second line is where the problems come in, is that the younger will rule over the elder. And where do we see this in history, in the lives of Israel and in her brothers around Israel? So, he was born smooth. Is that an exception to the rule? I think that is the norm, isn't it? But it says of Yaakov, he was born smooth and he lived in tents. He was a shepherd, which was the norm for the day. And I think what stood out in his life is that he valued the relationship he had with Abraham and the principles that Abraham showed in his life. We know that because the same prophetic blessings that the father gave to Abraham, he took it down in the line, he repeated in the line of Jacob, etc. All right, so we also saw that in the opportunity with the lentil soup and whatever, the tradition is that today, that was in the funeral expression of Abraham's life, and Jacob honored his father. Lentil soup as a meal of mourning, and Esau went hunting. So that is the difference between the two brothers. And up to this day, we've seen a struggle between them. So, chapter 32 is really the focus of the return of Jacob. And when Jacob came to a river, the Yabok river, he started making plans. So if we come to a place in our lives where we are confronted with the impossible, where we are confronted with, we know there's 400 people coming to stand on the other side of the river, and I've got to cross this, what do I do? And we've got plans for our lives. And I think this is one of the things that we do. Do you agree? It's just how we work. So, after he's made his plans to send all of his gifts and his wives and his children and all the rest over the river, and he remained behind, that night he had a struggle with the messenger of our father, not knowing that it is the messenger. So, and in the morning, he said, don't leave before you blessed me, and the messenger blessed him. And we can see that his life changes. His life just changes from that point forward. So, when I read through this portion, I was thinking, how many animals did he send over? Do you know? Lots. Yes, lots, I agree. Lots and lots of animals. There's a total, let me tell you, there's a total of 550 adults. 550 adult of different cattle and herd and whatever. So, but why 550, and what can it mean? Well, if we look at what was the intention of his heart to send over the animals. That's maybe to appease his brother, to give a gift so that his brother's heart can be softened and so that their relationship can be mended. You agree? Pride. Oh, a bribe. A bribe. You're right. I actually thought a new concept. I didn't think about pride, but bribe. Yes, I agree with it. Is I think it is a something that he employed to carry a message. Okay, so what was the message? If we look at what the Hebraic letter values is for 550, then we get to a word, the word tikkun. Tikkun means restoration. So it carries the message. It says that I'm sending you gifts, I'm sending you whatever. And remember when Esau received them, he said, what is the meaning of all of this? You know, do you remember? He says, what is the meaning of everything that we are receiving? And the meaning is restoration. So whatever we see in the lives of Israel at the moment, in making concessions and trying to appease the brothers, because the brothers are still around them, it is for the purpose of living peacefully. Okay? Do you agree? So, did it bring any repair between Esau and Yaakov, the gifts that he brought in their lives, those two brothers' lives? Did it? What do you think? No? There's the answer, no. I don't think the restoration, the long-term... Well, think about this. What does the text say? It says that when they saw one another, Esau jumped off his donkey and Jacob huddled along because he had a sore hip, and they hugged one another, and Esau kissed him, and Esau said, I've got enough, I don't need any gifts, my brother, I'm blessed. Jacob said, no, I've got more than enough, you just take it and be blessed. And so Esau says, come and join me in Mount Seir. Jacob said, yeah, what? So no, don't worry about it. I'm just going to Sukkot. Don't worry about that. And I'll send some men with you. And I said, no, don't worry, brother. I'm okay. I'll meet you back in Seir. Okay. And when do they see one another again? What's that? When Isaac died. When Isaac died, they went and they buried their father. And we don't hear of any struggles, any contentions. They don't have a close relationship apparently, but there's no struggles, there's no wars, there's no nothing in their lives. So I think there is temporary ceasefire, maybe. Maybe? I don't know. So, 32 verse 3, Jacob says, then Jacob sent messengers before him. This is now the process of chapter 32. Then Jacob sent messengers before him to Esau, his brother, in the land of Seir in the field of Edom. So if you look at a couple of those words and what it might mean is, does that only convey the message of, this is just by the way, this is what happened? If we look at some of those words, we see Seir, that the word there, the land of Seir, is the same word meaning hairy. You remember when Harry was born? Esau was born, he was very hairy. So I think that it's a remembrance. What he's trying to do is he remembers their lives. He remembers what has happened. He says, I want to make restoration, although all of these things were going along. Sadeh is the land. Land is the word Sadeh, and it brings back the memory of Esau as a man of the field. What happened when we saw in the text in Genesis 25, when Esau was a man of the field? Remember the context of that? That is where Isaac said, Go and get me some lambs. Go and get me some game. Go and get me some game so that I can eat and that I can bless you, my son. Esau is a man of the field. Edom is red. And we know that the lentil stew, which was red, brought up some memories in the lives of the brothers. So in between all of this, in between all of these realities that there is, Jacob sends animals across the river, says, I want to make restitution and I want to ask your forgiveness. This is the message. So, and I think this is been going on for some time, but what was Esau's response to all of this? Did he make any concessions? Did he what was the message? The relational message is the right word, from Esau's side in this meeting. What was the relational message? What do you think? Anything? Anyone? Did he come with open arms and he said, "I welcome you back, and I've actually got I brought bidulps around so that we can get your whole thing and you go to the land that you want to dwell in"? He came with his army. He came with 400 people in an army. So his intention when he left home was offensive. His intention was offensive. And we don't ever really see in Edom's life or in Esau's life that he approaches Jacob for the reason of restitution. It's always coming from Jacob's side. So there is a strategy in warfare. I think it makes sense. It is to get to know your adversary. It says that is this what we say in Jacob's life? You need to get to know your adversary, how he thinks, how he reacts, how he responds. You give him coded messages and whatever so that he can see what your intention of your heart is. Did that work for Jacob though? Did this sort of? He sent him the gifts and everything else. But what was Jacob's reality when he met Esau? Was it on strength of his knowing what to do, what to say, all of these schemes, everything coming together? I think it is the success that we can ascribe to that meeting was the encounter that Jacob had with the messenger of our Father. His name was changed. He had a new approach to life. From here on, it wasn't Yaakov, the heel grabber. From here on forward, it was the one that contended with Adonai and prevailed. This is a new image. This is a new Jacob, a new heart. So, I think in our lives is that we often are encountered with different things in our lives which is a big wall. There are some giants before us. And we plot and we think and we plan and we do all of these things to be able to work a way through the problems that we face. But we cannot do that with success without an encounter with our Father. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. So I think that should be the foundation of our plans, not the other way around as Jacob did. Because Jacob's planning was upside down. First he planned, then he sent gifts, he did all of the rest, and then he had an encounter with our Father, and then his heart was changed. And when he met Esau, he could do so with integrity and with remorse. But I think for us being believers, I think it's difficult to do because all of our being, everything is aligned to react soulishly and to think of plans and things that we have learned in business and financial planning and protection of your property and whatever else. It's all to do with our normal experience as humans. But the Torah that we are studying together teaches the other way around. That says, let us work from the framework that our Father has given us. Let's look at everything that He has said that's your protection and your life, and then make your plans from there. So this whole trip, this whole experience that we are walking together, this whole purpose is for us to be able to interpret life differently. You agree? I think this is the whole thing, and sometimes it's a little bit of an uphill battle because your normal intention, your normal way of thinking interferes with what we see in the Word and how we're supposed to live it out. I think it is always a challenge, but the Father gives us ample opportunity to work on our different areas in our lives. If you encounter a difficult situation, that's just one of the things that our Father provides so that you can sort yourself out. Do you agree? I think for Jacob, why did he think of this? I'll be with you now. Think of Jacob's experience. It's dark. Suddenly a man attacks him. Who does he expect? Esau. He expects Esau, and he battles for his life. This is what he do. He battles the whole night through. So much so that his name is changed that he contends with our Father and prevails. What do you think if he had some discernment and he realized this is a messenger from our Father? Right in the beginning, they could spend 12 hours together. Would they have had a wrestling match, or do you think there's other things that we can do with a messenger of our Father? And sometimes when it gets dark in our lives, when things are going wrong and things are heavy, we are looking for all the enemies in our lives, and we tend to battle them. And sometimes the things that do go wrong is a test that our Father brings into our lives so that we can sort out the hill-grabbing side of us. You know? And we should have discernment. And when you are in a difficult situation, it is sometimes difficult to discern. Is it our Father? Is it the enemy? Is it only yourself? What's going on? That's why we need brothers and sisters to walk alongside of you to help us through difficult days. Otherwise, if you're isolated and you sit on your own and you are just involved with your own thoughts, you can be confused. And this is just the way it is. And just hang on a sec. You know what? We do have people on Zoom, and they want to hear what you say.
It's interesting that he got the birthright, which he got in the right way, but he stole the blessing, and he never asked forgiveness for stealing the birthright. The blessing.
Clive wants to say something.
Jacob thought that he was meeting Esau and 400 men.
Yeah.
400 plus Esau is 401. It's the Aleph and the Tav.
Oh, it's an Aleph and a Tav. Oh, okay, that's interesting. I didn't think about that. The Tav's value is 400 and the Aleph is 401. Oh, that's an interesting connection. Didn't think about that. Thank you, Clive. Yeah, I think the Father provides opportunities in our lives. And this is why we've got a relationship with Him, is to be able to discern what is He doing in our lives. And I think this is why I appreciate this comment of this health minister of Israel so much, is because he is looking inward. And what can the cause be of our difficulty that we are going through? What is the problem? You know, it is not looking out there to whatever other people are doing to me. What is the intention of this and that and whoever? It is for the reason of we are going through a difficult time. What is the Father saying? Remember, every exile that Israel went through, every difficult time that Israel went through, what was the best way of getting out of it? What is the best way to have full restoration to shalom in the land? Repentance. Look at what you have done wrong and make teshuvah, go back to the character of our Father. And this is maybe a time that the Father can give us, if our focus is right, to return to Him and say we are completely dependent on who you are and what you do in our lives. Okay, that's just by the way. So, Jacob at Yabok. So, let's just think about it. This is a bit mathematics. Oh, not yet. So, Yaakov is spelled Yod Ayin Kuf Bet. That's the top letters there. For those who can't read it, it starts at the right. And it actually means the hand on the heel, because Ekev means heel. Because when he was born, what happened? He had his hand on his brother's heel. So, at the Yabok, revelation, the ayin, which is personal revelation, is removed from him because the yabok, which is Yod Bet Kuf, which is minus the ayin, means he will empty out. So when we get to a place of difficulty and struggle and this and whatever, then the Father sometimes wants us to be emptied out of our own plans and thoughts and schemes and whatever. What will happen if that's the case? If the Aleph of our Father's presence is brought back into that emptying out, then we are wrestling and contending with our Father, seeing what is the revelation, seeing what He's doing in our lives. And then when we get the revelation of what that is, then the Father restores us back to the land, restores us back to where He wants us to be. And interesting is it's difficult to find those. It's difficult to discern them, because that's the only two silent letters in the Hebrew alphabet. The ayin and the aleph. It's silent, there's no sound to them. Because the Father speaks with a small little voice. And it's necessary for us to draw close to Him to discern His voice. So when Jacob passed over the yabok, if you add that up, it is a 10 and a 2 and 100, which makes 112. And then look at the reality of our Father. Elohim is Aleph, Lamed, Hey, Yod, Mem. If you add that lot together, it's 86. Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey is 26, which adds up to 112. So, the yabok is a good place. That is where you meet our Father in His completeness. His revelation as Elohim, as God, and His revelation as Yotevave, as the one, the compassionate one, the one that we walk in the relationship with, the one that is gracious and compassionate, slow to anger, and rich in love and in truth. So, this is where Jacob had his character changed to Israel. So, let's just read this little portion together. This is really one line that I want to get from that, but we need a bit of context. It says, "And Yaakov said, 'No, please, if I have found favor in your eyes, then receive my present from my hand,' he says to Esau, 'because I have seen your face shining like the face of Elohim.'" There's a little bit of fear within him. "And you were pleased with me," and he's so grateful. So, please take my blessing that this is brought to you, because Elohim has favored me, and because I have all I need. And he urged him, and Esau took it. And Esau said, "Let us depart and go, and let me go before you." And Jacob said to Esau, "My master knows that the children are weak, and the flocks and the herds and everything, and are nursing and are with me." Didn't Esau just received quite a bit of flock? So the speed difference wouldn't be that much, I think. "And if the men should drive them hard one day, the flocks shall die. Please let my master go before his servant, and let me lead on slowly, according to the pace of the livestock that go before me, and according to the pace of the children, until I come to my master in Seir." So this little sentence, "and according to the pace of the children, until I come to my master in Seir." And Esau said, "Please let me leave with you some people who are with me. The people are the 400 men. But he said, 'Let me find favor in your eyes.' And Esau returned to Seir, and Jacob set out to Sukkot and built himself a house and made booths for the livestock. And this is why the name of the place is called Sukkot. Good. So the one goes to Seir, and the other one goes to Sukkot, traveling different directions to meet again at the burial of Isaac. Okay. That is more or less the Torah portion. So if we look at Obadiah in Hebrew, it means Oved, the servant of our Father. Oved is to serve, and Yote is the acronym for, the compressed acronym for our Father's name. So a couple of hundred, a couple of hundred years later, 1400 years later, a similar thing plays himself out. And remember, interesting, as I only thought about it this week, is the name Edom is spelled Aleph Dalet Mem, same as Adam, same word. Why will that be? What with the creation of Adam? It was from which ground did our Father take the red ground? He was rosy and red. He was Edom. Adama, Adam is the word for blood that comes from that same root. This is why it stands out that Esau was red. Okay, so 1 verse 1 says, "This is the vision of Obadiah. Thus says Adonai concerning Edom, we have heard tidings from Adonai, and an ambassador is sent among the nations, saying, Arise ye, arise nations, and let us rise up against her in battle." Okay, so who's the we there? The we is the believing community, the prophetic voice in Israel. Those are the ones that have heard that she is going to be destroyed. Who's the one that's going to be destroyed in Obadiah? Edom. Edom is the focus of the prophetic word in Obadiah. The preceding two books, what's it now, Joel and Amos, are all prophetic books describing the day of Yotevave, the judgment of our Father in the life of Israel. The focus of the judgment is on Israel, but Obadiah changes it, and he makes the focus of this the judgment of the nations. Okay, so if we think on when he lived, remember 2 weeks ago we spoke about Obadiah, but the previous one, the one who was a servant of Ahab, the one that was taking care of all the prophets and so forth. This is a different guy. He lived, he was contemporary with Jeremiah, and he lived within the Babylonian exile That was about that period, 597 to 538. Thereabouts, that was when the book was written. So, I was wondering, who's this addressed to? This is addressed to Edom. The whole book is addressed to Edom. What you have done to us, the Father is going to do this and the next. But when did they hear this? How did they hear this? Did the prophet go and stand before the mountains of Edom and proclaim the word of our Father so that they can hear it? And would they have heard it? This was addressed to Israel. This prophetic word was in the exile in Babylon. It was pronounced as hope for Israel. This was given as a message of hope that the Father have seen their distress. Yes, the Father have judged them when they came out of Israel, but the judgment on the nations will come. So this is more or less a story, the people that it was addressed to. So if we look at Genesis 36 says that when Esau settled himself in the mountains of Seir, the kingdom of Edom started to build, and we know that Israel made a round trip to Egypt and back for a couple 100 years. 400 years later, after the word was said, they returned back to Israel. So Israel is at least 400 years younger than what Edom was at that stage. So they are well established, and they have fortified cities, and everything is going well with Edom at that stage. So where are they, by the way? Do you know where the Mount Seir in Israel is? Do you know where it is? I've got some photos if you don't, so we'll get there now. So 1 verse 3 of Obadiah says, and look at the progression. This shows the progression on how Edom sees himself. And if we think about Edom being the nations of the earth, being Adam, think about what we see around us in the lives of the nations. The pride of your heart has deceived you, you that dwells in the clefts of the rock. Firstly, the clefts of rock is a strong place. This is a fortified place, whose habitation is high. Remember, they were sitting up and high in the mountain. Israel always approached them from the west to the east, and this is quite the high mountains, higher even than our mountains. And you have said in your heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? Who will bring me down to a fall? This is where Edom finds itself. Though thou mount on high as the eagle. It's interesting that the symbol of the eagle has been a symbol of strength. Edom took on the symbol of the eagle. Who's got the eagle today? Where did it make a round trip before it went to America? What about Rome? What was the symbol of Rome? It was the eagle. The eagle was a symbol of Rome. That's why we are at the moment we are in the Edomian exile. Well, before Israel returned. The 2,000-year exile was the Edomian exile. It was the Roman exile. And Germany also had the eagle. And it's usually of a very powerful entity that the eagle is made the symbol of. So, you are mount on high as the eagle, and you thought your nest to be among the stars in the heavens. Your nest is in the heavens. But our Father says that He will bring you down from there. So, there's a picture. So, what we see, where did Jacob and Esau meet? Round about there somewhere. They met one another because he went over to Shechem just a little while later. So it must have been the yabok is just about there, I think. That's the yabok. I think this is clearer. So that is the yabok somewhere. Yeah, over there. There's the Yabok River there. Ammon and Moab and Edom is at the bottom. Do you see where the Mount Seir is? Esau made all the effort to come right down from the Mount Seir when he heard that Jacob is returning to the land. And he came and he confronted him right there. And Jacob decided to live there, and he returned to his mountains. So, beautiful mountains, especially in winter, snow-capped mountains. So, you can see that it will be difficult to make war from the bottom upwards. He is high in the mountains as an eagle, and he's find himself of a place of strength. And I don't need to do anything to repent, because I am self-sufficient. And we know that that idea was not working well for Sodom and Gomorrah, because Sodom and Gomorrah had the same heart intent. I'm sufficient, I've got everything that I need, and I don't need compassion and everything else. So, in verse 10, maybe we can just have a look at it. Of Obadiah. Oh, this went through the wall. Oh my golly. That won't work. Alright, so maybe someone can read it for us, because now my sight is limited. I think Obadiah is in the Old Testament as far as I know. One verse, 10 to 12. Okay, let's just read it. Because you were the cause of violent death, and because of your cruel behavior to your brother Jacob, you will be covered with shame and be cut off forever. Because you were watching when men from other lands took away his goods, and strange men came into his doors and put the fate of Jerusalem to the decision of chance. You were like one of them. Do not see with pleasure to your brother's evil day. When the day of his fate, do not be glad over the children of Judah on the day of their destruction, or make wide your mouth on the day of trouble. And it continues, do not go into the doors of my people on the day of their downfall, etc. So we can see that from the text that from our father's perspective and from Israel's perspective, we are brothers with Moab. Okay? But it doesn't seem as if Moab is regarding them in the same way. Or Edom. I'm talking about Edom, sorry. And I think what they've done is in the time of the Babylonian exile, when Babylon came and destroyed Jerusalem, they were the nation that joined Babylon to destroy Israel. And they joined them on the temple courts. They were drinking liquor and whatever else. So, laughing at the fact that their brother has been destroyed. Why would that be in their heart? Why would that be in the heart of people that used to be family? What do you think? They are removed now a couple of 1,400 years. So I don't know my family from 1,400 years very well, but why would that be in the heart of someone? What lies underneath? Jealousy. What is the source of this rift that came between Jacob and Esau? It is the blessing of the firstborn, the right of the firstborn, and the blessing that was taken by Jacob away from Esau, and the descendants of Esau always wants to get that back, what belongs to them, in their minds. Okay, so Edom opposed Israel twice. What was the first time that Edom opposed Israel to the land? When Jacob came back from Lavan, he opposed them. We just spoke about it. What was the second time? From Egypt. From Egypt land. That was the second time that he opposed them. So now we find 1400 years later that Edom is participating in destroying of Jerusalem, and I think what we just said is that they want to win back everything that they perceive to be lost to Jacob. But we must remember that to Abraham it was said, all those who bless you will be blessed, and all those who curse you will be cursed. Okay, so, and the two words that are used there, those who curse you will be cursed, are two different words which you know by now. It is the word kalal, to make light of. When we speak lightly of my brothers, when I speak lightly of someone else, the Father says, if you speak lightly of them, I will arar, utterly destroy you. So it is important the way we speak of other people, especially people that are loved by our Father. So, a day of judgment against Edom. Curse, yeah. To make light of. Yeah. It is, and Allah is, that's why we get the idea of going up to Jerusalem, Aliyah, because you rise, you go up. It is something ascending, yeah. So, okay. Yeah, they are the guys that's living in Edom. Yeah, thank you. So, It is, yeah, kalal is to make light of, to speak lightly of, and to not regard. Remember, what is the word for kavod? For holy, what, for glory, sorry. The word for glory is kavod in Hebrew, and that means heaviness, weightiness. The weight of your glory, we say, of the glory of the Father. So to make light of is the opposite of to bring glory to. Okay, Abby, jy wou iets gesê? Yeah. Yeah, it's all the brothers. Yeah, all the brothers came again. This is what it is. I'm just thinking of... What? You saw that joke? What are you thinking about? I'm thinking about something. It made sense to me 10 seconds ago. Heaviness. Okay. It sounds heavy. I'll get back to that. Okay, the day of judgment. Let's just read verse 5 and 6. If thieves came attacking you by night, would they not go on taking until... I haven't got my glasses, I'm sorry. Taking until they have had enough? If men came cutting down your grapes, would they take them all? How are the things of Esau searched out? How are his secret stores looked for? All the men who were united with you have been false to you, driving you out to the edge of the land, and the men who were at peace with you have overcome you, and they have taken their heritage in your place. So we can see that the Father, right in the first verse, said that I am going to call the nations against you and to cut you off completely. So this is what's happening against Edom. They are completely destroyed. The brother of Jacob, because he has acted against his brother and attacked him in the day of his vulnerability and judgment, that is why he is destroyed. So, I think there's a message in there somehow for us as well. It says in verse 19 and 20 that Israel, although they've been judged, because remember what Obadiah says, Israel was already judged. When was the day of judgment, the day of Adonai for Israel? In the book of Obadiah? When was that? That was when Babylon and Edom came and destroyed Israel and destroyed Jerusalem, broke down the temple. That was the day of judgment. But the difference is, Israel will be restored. Israel will recover. Israel will come back. There will be a remnant that the Father will bring back, restore them in the land, and they will flourish. Not so the judgment that will happen to Edom. Because later in life, the Nabateans came from the northeastern directions, and they came from the back, and they destroyed Edom completely. They destroyed them completely. And actually Edom, they fled down into the valleys, and they assimilated some of them with Judah. And who do we know was an Edomite that assimilated with Judah that we know of in Scripture in the time of Messiah? Herodes. Yes, Herod. He was an Edomian. He became the king of Israel. So, there it is. What a surprise. So Herod was sent down. Herod was used to be the king of Israel, which caused much destruction in their lives. So later on, when Edom disappeared from history in the days of Obadiah, when he disappeared, later on in Messiah's time, we find a new a repetition of the same trend in the days of Edom, identified as Rome. And we know of it as the Roman exile from the time of Messiah onwards to the reestablishing of Israel. So, and in this time we know that Israel suffered greatly. There was great suffering in the lives of Israel, because in Matthew 24, a number of the things that Messiah said that pointed to the day of Yahweh, that pointed to the day of Jacob's trouble, to Jacob's distress, happened in the destruction of Israel right after Messiah left. So, but the problem is, in our lifetime, or that of my father's lifetime, we see that, as we just spoke, all the brothers around Israel, the day when Israel was re-established, the brothers welcomed him back. Remember? There was an immense war that tried to drive Israel out from the land which they were just establishing themselves in. And that was the brothers that attacked him again. So, who is the brothers? Ammon, Moab, and Edom. The people that live there. Jordania and all the rest. So, what do we think about Christianity? Where do we come from and where do we align ourselves with? Do we align ourselves, our hearts, our lives, our thinking more with Israel, traditional Israel that came out of the land, or do we align ourselves with Edom, coming from Rome? Where do we, I'm not saying us as a group, Christianity in general. I think there's a risk, and I think this is one of the things that the Father is calling us to come back from. The Father is calling us to re-establish our roots and our hearts in the lives and the people of Scriptures. And I think this is a transition for us. It's a period that we need to realign ourselves to stand on the truth of the Word and to live in the example that Messiah has given us, and to live according to the examples that the disciples were walking, and the good news of the gospel. All of those things should be our portion. And I don't think we must walk disrespectful against everybody else that remains in the respect and love and compassion and all those things. It must be true in our hearts, and we must walk in integrity when we do that. But I think that we are called to walk in the example that Messiah has given us. And if we are a true disciple of Messiah, then we should walk in the ways that was precious to him. And I think this is what we are called to. So there's a tendency, a big tendency in the 2,000-year history of replacing whatever the Hebraic concept was, and replacing Shabbat with Sunday. You know all of these things, and it's not necessary to repeat them. But I think the brothers of Christianity, are we the brethren of our Israeli, of our Jewish brothers? Are we supposed to be brothers? Are we spiritual brothers? We are definitely. For sure we are. We are grafted into the tree of Israel. We are their brothers. They are the root, the source. So the moment that we separate ourselves and we start contending and pointing fingers at our family, we are seeing that there's a judgment that the Father pronounces on people that has got that way of life. And I think it should be a warning for humanity. Remember Adam, humanity? It says that however we treat Israel and however we treat our brethren, it will have a consequence in your life. And in the time, and one of the times of Israel's need, I'm thinking of 48, when Israel was, actually before that, during the war, when Israel was crying out for salvation and between the nations, and Cape Town closed their port for a ship with Jewish people in it and sent them back. And so did many other nations, not wanting to accept any people. I think that lies as a judgment on a country. It definitely does. And where is Christianity in terms of, do we embrace the rest of the family? We are not becoming Jewish people. Just if you thought this is what I'm saying. We are not trying to become Jewish. That's not what I'm saying. But they are family. And we need to respect them as family and walk together as family. Because in Ezekiel it says, when the two sticks, the stick of Ephraim and the stick of Judea, is bound together in the Father's hand, that's when he can start to live out the purposes of the end. So, and we should align our hearts more and more and more of what we should do in terms of our focus on Israel and our focus on what the Father's purpose is and what He's doing in this day on the earth. And I think that's part of it. So, Obadiah 1:10 is a message for us. It says, "For the violence done to your brother Yaakov, shame shall cover you, and you shall be cut off forever." So I don't think we should step into that hole. I don't think that is something that we mustn't make light of, belittle people. And it goes for the rest of Israel. And who else is Israel apart from the Jewish people? Everyone that's grafted into the tree, everyone that's grafted into Messiah, whether they know it or not, are part of that reality. Do you agree? So if we speak negatively and without respect of other Christian believers, we are doing the same thing. We must be very careful. Respect and love and compassion, those things are the way of life. Disrespect and judgment on all those things are the way of death. So, why the severity against Edom? Because they were regarded as brothers. If you replace that Aleph Dalet Mem with Adam, it's in a parable. The whole book of Obadiah is a parable speaking to our expectation of our experience in this day. You know, so as we say, Edom is not something of the past. He is the physical brother. He's not a nation anymore because he was judged by the Father. But there is a remnant. Edom still exists. The reality of Edom still exists. So, Jacob's distress. I think we've done this. Let's just run through them. Jerusalem was destroyed, taken to Babylon. Edom helped, and he enjoyed it. Israel was conquered and destroyed by Rome. Oh, this is what I was trying to remember. Daniel 9:26. I'm back there. It takes time. As when my hard drive spins up, I can remember it. It says, and at the end of times, even after 62 weeks, one on whom the holy oil has been put will be cut off, and have no, what's this? And the town and the holy place will be made waste together with the prince, and the end will come with an overflowing of waters, and even to the end there will be war, making waste which has been fixed. No, it doesn't seem familiar. Where is the prince that came? It's in this portion of text. The prince and his people. It must be here. No, it's gone. I thought it's here. Is it verse 25? Okay, but it says the one that destroyed the city, and what it boils down to, I can't find it right now. It's in that text. We can look at it later. I don't want to take too much time. But what it says is that there is a prince that came. Is it 26? A prince that came. I can't see it. I don't know. It must be. Yeah. Okay, let's just read it together. It's cut off. And the town and the holy place will be made together with a prince. And the end, somewhere, there's something missing. Let me just. Oh, there it is. Thank you. That's what it is. The people of the prince that is to come. And the people, who is the people of the prince? No, the prince that cut them off. Who is the prince? Who is the people of the prince? Remember, this is what Rome did. Is Rome brought Titus. He brought a general. But he volunteered the nation of the geographic area. So all of the brethren that were situated around Israel was volunteered to come and help. It was an Arabian force that came to destroy Jerusalem at that time. So Israel was conquered by Edom, but the brothers helped again. So before Isaiah 66:7, before she travailed, she brought forth. Before her pain came, she gave birth to a boy. I just thought that's a relevant verse. It speaks about Messiah's birth. It speaks about the birth of Messiah. And he was born before the travail of Jerusalem came, when she was destroyed in AD 70, in 135 at the end. So before Jerusalem travailed, she brought forth. Before Jerusalem's pain came, she gave birth to a boy. It's a prophetic word about the time and destruction of Messiah and the destruction of Jerusalem. So in our day, the king is getting ready to come. Do you agree? I think, is there a sort of agreement here that we don't know exactly when, we don't know what, but we can place Shal Mashiach, the birth pains of Messiah. We can see it around us. And I think the steps that we are walking, we can see this every day in the news. The king is ready to come, and Edom will suffer its last defeat. If we look at what Obadiah said, then the darkness on the nations are getting darker and darker, And the Father is going to destroy the governments, the nation groups that set itself up against the reality of the kingdom. And I think as we go along, it's going to become clearer and clearer. If you see the political turmoil and everything else in the world today, I think this is a reality in our lives. But there is good news. The joy of His coming will erase the memory of the days of trouble. And I think this is what we should focus on. What is it that we focus on? Do we focus on the political turmoil? Do we focus on the schemes of the enemy or whatever he might bring? Do we look at those things? I think that's going to cause us to be distracted. That's going to cause us not to be able to walk in the ways of the Father, to have that mitzvot, the command, as a lamp for our feet, and the Torah as a light for our path. Because these things crosses our roads, and I'm thinking of a little road that I'm walking on, and then there is something, there's tire marks that just comes and it crosses the road, and if I start following that, I'm going to lose what the Father is calling me to walk in. So we must be very careful not to open our ears to the voices of the world. That's going to cause trouble. Jeremiah says, I have heard the sound of terror, of dread, and there is no peace. Is that more or less the message that we hear today on the news? Ask now and see if a male can give birth. And why do I see every man on his hands on his loins, and as a woman in childbirth? And why have all faces turned pale for the great day, and there is none like it? It's the time of Jacob's distress, but he will be saved from it. So there's a reality of darkness, but the thing is, our Father takes care of us. If we walk in Him and we are found in Him and we focus on Him with everything that we do, we will be good. Okay, we've said this, we've done that. Obadiah is actually a book of judgment against the nations. Why does a book of judgment against the nations cause hope in Judah's life? Why will this be? What do you think? Doesn't make sense at all. Because this is the basic story, is that this book is written to Judah for the ears of Judah to say that in the midst of trouble, in the midst of darkness, I am your Redeemer, I am your hope, and I will redeem you. The thing is, as we see the judgment on the nations around us, that should start, the process should start to fill our hearts with hope so that our redemption is near. I think if individuals in the nations that are under pressure and going through difficult times and are experiencing fear and whatever else, those are the people that's ripe unto harvest. Because why are we here in any case? For the harvest, to shine the light of the kingdom, so that when these days come, we can be here and shine the light to the people around us so that they will be drawn to the Father. Remember that story there it says that that there will be 10 men around the tzitzit of a Jewish person. For what reason? Because we can see that the Father is with you. Can the people around us see that the Father is with us? Or are we dabbling in the things that causes fear and bring confusion and do all of that? Our message must be clear. So, Joel says, I will enter into judgment with the nations. And that's clear. And so, Obadiah, the portion of hope, says, Israel is going under pressure. Israel is really, let's read it. And they of the south shall possess the mount of Esau. What happened in the southern parts of Judah? They were in permanent contention. A strong king comes, David comes, Solomon comes, Hezekiah comes. All of those righteous kings come, they push them back. They push the Philistines back into the sea, they push the guys back over the mountains, and they occupy the land. And the trade route from south to north is protected, and everybody is happy, and Israel flourishes. A weak king like Ahab and all the rest comes, and things go south. No, not geographically. But then Philistines come and they take over the trade routes, and Edom comes and they occupy the land, and eventually, under a weak king that's unrighteous, they come and they conquer Jerusalem. So, they shall possess the fields of Ephraim and the fields of Samaria, and Benjamin shall possess Gilead over the river, the side of Jordan. And the captivity of the host of the children of Israel shall possess that of the Canaanites, and even to Zarephath at the top between Tyre and Sidon. And the captivity of Jerusalem, which is in Zarephath, and shall possess the cities of the south. And the Saviour shall come on the mountain of Zion to judge the mount of Esau, and the kingdom shall be Adonai's. This is the message of hope. Yes, the nations will be judged. Why are the nations judged? What is the purpose of the judgment that comes? What is the purpose of the judgment and all dread that we see around us? Firstly, if we can see if it's in the agenda of the Father. For what reason? For the reason of, Father, help me, turning back to Adonai and live a life and becoming part of the kingdom so that we can live a life of righteousness. It's the harvest. It's a time of harvest. It's a time of difficulty. So, a parable of the rise and fall of all nations, I think, is what this is about. Is mankind stands before a door that we must decide for or against the kingdom. And as we are going into the days ahead of us, it's going to become more evident. And I think the decisions are going to become harder and more difficult, and it's going to have greater consequence. But I think if we can live as a community of believers, and we can encourage one another and support one another and live in unity, we will be able to walk through this and shine the light of Messiah to the nation around us. So, the thing is, what does pride consist of? Do you think there's a slight possibility that there's a little bit of pride within us? Do you think so? You think so? Aren't we like Moses? Humble, Do you think so? I think every one of us, and I think this is the risk with looking at a condition in the world. And we know what the condition's name is, without putting a face to it. Because then we can align ourselves to concepts. But if we can have compassion on the people, then our hearts start to reflect the heart of the Father. And I think this is our challenge. We should think of where we are and think what difference can we make in a time like we are living in today. Do we make a difference for the kingdom or not? We should. That's our calling. That's our calling, but we are walking. If we are doing this, we are turning around and we're swimming upstream. That's the thing. So, Edom's downfall points to our dependence on our Father's redemption for restoration. If the world is undergoing difficulty and Biden is going to take the throne of America and all the other beautiful things that's happening in the world, we must focus on what the Father is doing, and we must know that we are called to make a difference in the world. So I think I'm just about there, but the calling of the Father and His end purpose is that truth and justice will have the victory at the end, and it's exemplified in the experience of Israel. And I think if we can live that, and if we can embrace that, then we are in a good place. How are we going to maintain a balance in these days? How are we going to maintain balance in these stormy days? How will we do that? Be tethered to our Father's presence through a personal relationship and studying of His Word, and forgetting about what the pros and cons of things are around us. How do we walk and reflect the light of Messiah in these dark days? By personal relationship with Him, by prayer and worship and studying the Word and living according to His principles. And I'm going to close with this verse. It says, Colossians 3:14 says, most of all, let love guide your life. For then the whole community, the whole church will stay together in perfect harmony. And let the peace of the heart that comes from Messiah will always be present in your heart and lives. For this is your responsibility and privilege as members of the body. Always be thankful. Do we think our lives are more difficult than the disciples' lives, the times that they were living in? Do you think so? Or is it easier, more safe? Remember, Rome was persecuting them every day. People were crucified on the entrances of the cities. We don't know hardship like they experienced. But look at what they write to the Colossians, to the guys that are under Roman rule. They say, let love fill your heart, let compassion for people around you be your guidance. Let peace of your heart, let the shalom on your heart, for it comes from Messiah, be always present in your heart and lives. For this is your responsibility and privilege as members of this body. So let this be our privilege and our responsibility, is to proclaim things that brings peace in our lives. Would you agree? We are going through difficult days, and I think especially in South Africa, where the economy is not so brilliant. I don't know, but I've heard the economy is not so brilliant. And things are not looking up, but we can make a difference, even if it is to proclaim the goodness and the mercy and the grace of our Father in these difficult days. I promise this is the last slide. He has told you, O man, what is good and what our Father requires of you, but to do justice and to love mercy and to walk humbly with Adonai. Amen.